got it going. With the spin of the wheel, we'll uncover our fate and stream it to you on one take. We tend to be loud and we fight quite a bit, but it's an unscripted show, so you get what you get. If we stopped it right now and we just walked away, we'd be back here next week, cause we just can't wait to play.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of ARG Presents. Your good buddy, your good pal, Amigo Aaron, joined by a man that doesn't look any better in CRT form than he does on any screen. I give you the Brent.
I'm a little blockier.
And I didn't think that was possible. For God's sakes, never look at him in monochrome. Your head will explode. So, Brent, a couple weeks ago, we spun the wheel and we made the deal.
Yes.
And I believe this was your joint this week.
It was.
Because the piece that came up was games that look better on a CRT television. Now, what was the impetus to make you come up with this particular piece, Brent?
I don't know.
We don't normally.
This was literally a piece I made years ago.
That is, we do happen to get some that we just never have put on the wheel, and that's one of them, I guess. I will say, it's fresh in my mind all the time, because mostly because for capturing purposes, I will say capturing from games that were made for a CRT is a pain in the butt when you're trying to put them in the computer. Even today in 2025, it's a never-ending struggle. Try to get these games to bend to my will and fit in a little box on my screen for digitization purposes. But you know, I grew up with nothing but a CRT for most of the time, and we were also late. I mean, I was late to the party getting an LCD panel.
Yes.
I had I think the first LCD TV I ever got may have been up on Mud Mountain. I mean, it was well in. It was the middle 2000s, I think, before I made the switch, because I had a big monster CRT that I carried with me everywhere until it ultimately died.
That's the one you won, isn't it?
No, that was I won a black and white TV at the skate arena.
Well, that's something.
But so you're close.
I thought you won that at a school event.
No, that's a whole other winning.
Oh, gotcha.
You're mixing several dozen years of Aaron stories together. But the one thing I will tell you about the LCD, when they came around, I remember the first time I ever saw one, my buddy got an LCD monitor for his computer, and we all were stunned at this thing. Because we'd never seen a monitor that thin.
Yeah.
You know, he paid top dollar for it. But what struck me was how much easier it was to move.
Yes.
And that was a big key, wasn't it?
Now, see, I can talk directly to that. When I first started my job at Dow Chemical doing tech work, the engineering department, which was about 80 people at the time, had all got new 21-inch CRT monitors, and it was our job to deliver them. And they, once you pass about 30, you're done wanting to move these things.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when LCDs come along, and engineers being engineers, they want the latest and greatest things. We also had to remove all those CRT monitors. And my buddy, who I worked with at the time, when he would take those things, because they were all going to disposal.
Yeah.
Regardless if they worked or not, they were going to disposal. He would take them and face down, so screen down, and slide them on concrete. Because we would stop, and we could only take a dolly so far, but we had to get them into the truck.
Yeah.
So about a 10-foot stretch, and this wasn't smooth concrete. It's the little pebbly kind.
Yeah.
And he did it one day, shoved it, and that thing just went right off the side of the dock, burst. We had to fill out an incident report, and now because it has magic smoke came out and all that good crap.
Your buddy wasn't what I would call a genius.
No, he wasn't.
Think about how many good monitors got trashed that day.
A lot, and they were fancy. They were the light 21-inch monitor CRTs, and we were taking out 17-inch CRTs. And I actually squirreled a few of those away for a while because they were high-end CRT, and they were heavier than the 21 inches.
Yeah.
The 17s were.
The first big CRT I had, I bought 25-inch CRT monitor for when I was playing. I think it's for when I was playing EverQuest, and I remember getting this thing delivered, and this huge box, and then loafing it in there, and then about, I don't know, 6 months in, it went bad. So I had to send it back. Oh my God, what a pain. Then they sent me another one. It eventually also went bad, and I just gave up.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm out. But for a while, I had those 25 inches. But the funny thing is, of course, my TV was huge. And that, by the way, that TV ended up in our arcade machine. So it may still be down in your arcade right now.
Is. I guarantee it is.
But our good buddy TSI Matt gave me a big CRT, which sits in my house right now that I use. In fact, I used it this week. It's got component and composite cables on it, so it's pretty nice. Now, let's shift gears here and talk about why does it make a difference to you?
Well, let's get the one out of the way first. The one that everyone always thinks of, and that is light gun compatibility.
Yeah.
Most modern televisions will not work with the old style light guns, and that's just all there is to it. So if you're wanting to play some of those things with, period correct hardware, you've got to go CRT.
Yeah. Well, they do have, of course, now they've made those new light guns that you can play on an LCD with a few accoutrements.
Right,
yeah.
but that's not the same
Right.
hardware. The second thing is, up until recently, the refresh rate of a CRT was superior.
Oh yeah.
In every considerable way.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy, but it's the truth. It's the way it was. The response time, you can't do better than the CRT.
Yeah.
The lag input is basically zero. I remember when we would go play Rock Band or something on a non-CRT television, you always had to adjust the lag.
Yeah.
That was one of the first things you had to do, which with CRTs, you don't have to do that. And for me, I think the unsung hero in all this is pixels just look better on CRT if the game was designed with CRT monitors in mind.
Yeah.
When you get such a sharp image from an LCD, and this isn't old man shaking fist at clouds. The technology,
that comes later.
The technology had to move on,
Yeah.
and it was right to do so. Modern games, far and beyond, look superior to old games, whether you're playing on a CRT or not.
Yeah.
But retro style games, in your 80s video games, was made to look good on a CRT monitor, and if you don't have those pixels, they just don't look the same.
Yeah. I think the inverse is really where the real problem is that if you're playing a game designed for a CRT TV, and you play it on a modern, like a high def or a 4K display, it just makes that game look god awful.
Yes.
Real bad.
And no matter how many filters you shove through they help, but they are not the same.
Filtering has come a long way in the
has.
last few years,
It
and
has.
you can actually get a pretty darn good screen. In fact, I filtered a lot with the filters this week with the Mister after seeing if I could simulate, and you can sort of come close. But I think part of the difference is the CRT is that you've got that curved screen in there, and it's the way it blows the pixels, it's the way it puts the picture on the screen. It renders it in a different way.
Yeah.
And I use the example of playing, like, you could get a real high def TV and put a Vectrix game on it, but it's not going to look like it does on a Vector monitor because there's just a different technology in play.
Yes.
And so while you can do stuff like run an old game through something to modernize it, you can't really get the same feeling you did because it's just not. It may look 100 times better, but it doesn't look the same.
Correct.
If that makes any sense. Where do you come down on these? And I've got a few of these. Where do you come down on these items you can pick up that line doublers and stuff stuff to increase the resolution or the pixelation of these games to make them look better on a modern monitor? I mean, is this something you would have, or do you have any of those?
No, it's not something that interests me. By the time I go back and play a retro game, and full disclosure, I have 0 CRTs in my house.
Yeah.
I have none. I don't have any remaining. I have some down at the basement that aren't getting used, at the other house, but
Yeah.
I don't have any CRTs. And the main reason why is convenience.
Yeah.
And I still play retro games all the time, and I don't put on filters. I accept that I'm not getting the true experience, and it's all comes down, like I said, to convenience, and that's why I don't have a CRT. For my current situation, the way my house is laid out, having a CRT, even a 17-inch CRT, would take up more room than I'm willing to give it.
It's funny. I was pretty in favor of CRTs for a long time, and then there was a breaking point. It's funny because were involved in it. We had an arcade machine with a big CRT in it.
Yeah.
It was and Brett was like, "Why don't we just take the control panel of this thing and put it on the wall and just put a LCD on the wall?" And I was not going to have it. And for years I fought. And then one day it just hit me. This is dumb. We need the space, and we'll have a TV twice as big. And I thought at the time, well, if I can't stand it, I'll get some filters and stuff like that. And ultimately, it's been fine.
Yeah.
It's not been a problem. But
And it literally saved us, 12 square foot?
Yeah.
I mean, it was huge.
Yeah. And then on top of that, and I saw somebody mention this in the chat, you just get tired of moving them.
Yeah.
They're so heavy. I've fixed several CRTs in the last 20 years, including bad grounds, and caps gone bad. They're generally, if something goes bad, and I'll use the Amiga 1084 for example, it's a highly fixable unit. It's not that tough to go in there and we've recapped. I'm sitting here beside a Donkey Kong. I recapped it, and it looks great because we've got CRT monitor right here. We've got CRT right there in front of us. So I'm still okay with CRTs. But here I'm a guy that will watch something on a VCR on a CRT TV and not think twice and not care that it's not 4K.
Yeah.
I have lived my whole life just not giving a crap about quality. I'm an old bootlegger. I used to watch screeners grabbed out of the movie theater or the shaky cam, and you could see people stand up and cheer when something cool happens, like the old days. So, I mean, I'm willing to level down on the quality. But with all that said, some things just look better on a CRT, and,
Yes.
and it plays better, and it probably will even make you feel better, I think, given a certain age requirement maybe in there. And so that's what we were tasked with this week. Try to find a couple games that we thought were just better served on a CRT.
Yes. And I think I'm going to start us out, Aaron.
All right, go ahead.
I picked a game that, I didn't play a lot in my childhood.
Yeah, I was surprised by this choice.
But after doing a little bit of research, I think this ticks all the boxes that really says, you know what, this plays better on a CRT. And that's Sonic the Hedgehog, the 1991 game for the Genesis. I'm not going to go a whole lot into what Sonic the Hedgehog is or what makes Sonic the Hedgehog a classic game. I think we've all been there, right? We all know what Sonic is. But one thing I do want to
Never heard of it.
For those completely not in the know, Sonic the Hedgehog was a Genesis game from 1991, and its whole thing was being faster than Nintendo's Mario. That's where that was its selling point, and that was how it was marketed.
Yeah, blast processing.
Well, that's right.
It had blast in it.
This was during the Super Nintendo Sega Wars,
Yeah.
the console wars of the 90s, for which I was firmly on the side of Nintendo. And I look back, and although I do feel that Super Nintendo is superior to the Genesis, I do not feel that the Nintendo Corporation is superior to the Sega Corporation in any way.
I don't know. They're still around, and they're still making hardware, so
Well.
at least they're a little more savvy. How about that?
They are definitely in the business of being jerks. So let's talk a little bit. Of course, this came out on the Sega Genesis. Eventually, this had an arcade release of sorts. It had a Game Boy release of sorts. It was on Windows, sort of.
Yeah, I played it on there.
Nintendo 3DS, iOS, Android, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, and Nintendo Switch. None of those matter.
Yeah.
It's only the Genesis one that matters because it was made to be played on a CRT monitor. And what do I mean by that outside of the obvious? the scrolling in Sonic was it wasn't unique to video games, but it had a parallax scrolling that was just so fine that when you put it on an LCD, it makes it so rigid
It
that
pops.
that it's bad.
Yeah.
You don't want that. You want it to blend, and you can't get that kind of blending unless you're on a CRT. Also, when you're Sonic and you're running through a level and you hit a real fast spot, CRTs are going to keep up with that refresh rate and keep you going at the proper speed without blurs.
Yeah.
Early LCDs, especially, you
Yeah.
had that blur effect, and it was nasty.
Yeah, it was.
And it was something that would absolutely kill your retro gaming experience.
I will say, before you get too far, this old LCD TVs almost all sucked for games.
Yes.
They were slow, and also, let's not even talk about the parallax area from looking from the wrong side. They were horrible at that,
yeah.
too.
And that was one thing that you could definitely do with a CRT that you could not do with an early LCD, was if someone was watching you play, they had to be sitting right beside you.
Yeah.
There was no setting off to the side, because it washed out the colors and did all kinds of nasty stuff to it. But it wasn't made for an LCD. It was made for a CRT monitor. And if you look at a picture, even a picture of a CRT Sonic the Hedgehog standing there, and a picture of what he looks like on an LCD screen, the CRT, since it is not as precise, since the resolution is not as high, but it's not supposed to be, all of the jaggeds around his face, around his I guess quills on the top of his head, they smooth in this nice, pleasing fashion. And when you look on it on an LCD, you can pull it up, look at a picture of him right now, or pull up the game and look at him. It's so squared.
Yeah.
Everything is so squared off, because that precision was never even considered when they were making the game.
Even the rings are squared.
Everything.
I noticed that when I was playing this.
So, in my opinion, if I had to pick a single game from the console era that just had everything that made a CRT good, Sonic has it. It's got the scrolling backgrounds. It's got the pixel art that blends correctly when you're viewing it on a CRT. The speed, the reaction time, that when you have to jump, you've got to jump, and there can't be a delay. It's all there with a CRT, and it's not on an LCD. And what's funny is, when I was playing this week, right?
Yeah.
And I was trying, because I've never been a huge Sonic fan. I've never been good at Sonic, all that jazz. I was having a hard time, and I swear to you, Aaron, I think it was input lag that was getting me killed or stopped more than anything else.
Well, I mean, this would be the game where that would happen.
Yeah.
It's a pretty game that requires a pretty precise control. You know, I was surprised when you picked this, because I don't think either one of us were big Sonic. I don't hate Sonic. It's just not. And I will say that I've played Sonic more on my Game Gear than I played on the Genesis.
Which is not.
Well, I've got one. It's not that good.
That's talk about smear central.
Yeah, but I like some aspects of the game, but I don't like. I like running fast and going through crazy mazes, but I don't necessarily like all the stuff that slows you down. And I think that it's funny, for a game that puffs up its chest about being so fast, and it gets you moving so fast and you're real excited, it's got a bad habit of like putting crap in your way. And to me, that's not fun. Me and Bo talk about this all the time. We want to, I mean, you can't have a game where Sonic just runs at full speed the whole time, but that's sort of what I want.
Well, here's the thing though. If you're good at Sonic, you can run a lot more than someone who is bad at Sonic.
It's like if you've memorized Sonic.
Well,
a better way to put it.
Okay.
Well, I'm just saying that's what it is. And there's a difference between, I mean, think about, this is the Mario killer, right? If you think about the way you play Mario versus the way you play Sonic, they really are almost completely dissimilar. I mean, they're not real comparable. The play styles are different.
Okay, well, I understand
you know what I mean?
you're saying.
I mean, they're like, I'm not saying one's better than the other, although I think Mario's better. But Mario's better at being a Mario game, and Sonic's better at being a Sonic game. So I like the idea of going real fast through the course. They put a lot of stuff in there that works well with the speed, you know. And on the other side, Mario, it's more precision jumping. There's some elements of it that requires speed, but not like Sonic type speed, you know. And Sonic sometimes does some Mario like stuff, but overall, I find them pretty dissimilar. So, but with all that said, graphically. I thought, man, this is a weird choice by Brent, but once I actually sat and played it, it's actually a good choice. You're right. When you play this, I loaded this up. I've got a Sega with multi-cart. I loaded this up and played it. Went in the living room and played it, and it plays good. It looks good. It plays good. You're right about and there's a lot of games. I played this in the Mister as that counteract what it looks like on a monitor with no filters, and it looks. All the games from that era look blocky. And they don't look right, and that's of course obvious. They weren't designed to be played in a resolution that high. Could I make it? So my next goal on these was could I make this look good? And you can. The Mister's got a wide variety of filters that can make it look pretty good. But so throw the Mister out. I saw Josh mention the Retro Tink just a minute ago in the chat. I've got a Retro Tink 2. I don't have the super expensive one, and it does a good deal of. That is probably one of the best ways to go to hook your Genesis up to a modern TV, which these things can happen. And is it gonna look more high res and beautiful than the original? I mean, it's gonna look more high res, but does it look better? I like the CRT look of it.
Yeah.
And you can't simulate that. What you're doing is you're fitting an old game into a new to a new screen. You're not fitting. Where the old game was meant to be on this old screen. That's where it should be.
Right.
And it doesn't necessarily improve the game. It does improve the looks.
I agree. And the Sonic, of course, sold millions upon millions upon millions of games.
Yeah.
Obviously, like I read before, ported to a billion different systems. It's been remastered to bring it into the modern age. Now, I haven't played any of those remastered, but I looked at a few, and I personally, and this is just a preference thing, do not think they look good. I think they look like someone took Sonic and filled in all the little rounded all the little boxes and filled in all the little holes, but I don't think that's a good look for the character. I really like his CRT look, and I think that the developers over at Sega really nailed what they were going for the time period that this was released.
Normally I'd hammer you for being an idiot, but you're not. You're right. And I'm going to explain why I agree with you on this one. I see a lot the new it's not already the new hotness, but the hotness is to remaster these old games. You see a lot of remasters. And I like them, by the way. That way you can play your old games on a modern console. That's fine. No problem.
Sure.
With all that said, I happen to have access to all the old consoles because I own them, right? And if you are very fortunate like myself, and you get to make the choice, do I want the remastered version or should I just play the original? The original is the one you remember. And the funny thing is we don't have any nostalgia for Sonic. I don't.
Right.
But I'm like you. I just think that it looks better on a CRT. And plus, the CRT had something. I mentioned this to both today. There's a warmth that you get from the CRT. I don't know what it is.
A glow, yeah.
That you don't get from an LCD screen. That I prefer. So for a game like Sonic, I would agree with you. I think this is a good choice. The Brent on that one. Anything in terms of game wise? Is there anything that you want to talk about in terms of the game proper?
Well, I think that Sonic is certainly popular enough that people either know it and like it or know it and don't like it. I don't think that our fans are going to be swayed by what I say either way. I think that if you want to learn a platformer to make it feel better, this Sonic is certainly a way to go. Just like I have an understanding of Super Mario Brothers that I picked up in my childhood and I've played recently. I still have it. I know where all the secrets are. I know the fastest way to get through levels. And I'm not world record pace, but I can beat the game in, 6 minutes. Where Sonic, I could see myself hooking up this game, playing it, learning it, so I can do that kind of speed, that kind of advancement on a game like this. And I think that really lends itself well for that.
We did get a couple of Discord reviews listening. We also got I asked the Discord to comment on CRTs. Now, at the end of the show, we're going to go over some of what they thought about the CRT
Sure.
question. Our own Boat of Card chimed in on Sonic. I think I know where it's going to go because I've talked to Boat. Boat says, a simultaneous kick to the gut and a nail in the coffin to 16-bit apologists. Sonic the Hedgehog had Amiga and ST owners beelining for shovels in their garages to bury their obsolete wedges in the backyard to move on to true next-gen gaming without the help of the Bitmap brothers of the Oliver twins. But he can't help himself. Sonic is an audiovisual delight that loses none of its charm 35 years later, at least for the first few levels. Unfortunately, the only way game designers knew how to make Sonic harder was to slow him down and to put him underwater, which is where a hero ends up in the latter part of the game, and Sonic without the speed loses all of its fun. After experimenting with various filters on the Mister, I found that the composite blend you would get through a CRT monitor offered the most pleasing results, while the CRT filter just turned on bandy scanlines, which I found to be frustrating.
Yeah, those
So
aren't the
Boat
same.
was not Boat. He did his best to wiggle through on that one, and that's all we got on that one. I think, like I said, most people are pretty familiar with the old Hedgehog, but I think that's a good choice. I think you that does a good job of explaining what we're talking about.
Absolutely. Now, Aaron, what did you bring to the table?
I'm gonna sneeze. That's what I brought to the table. So,
All right, germs.
you know,
Disease.
I told you before the show, I played a game a month or two ago. I think it was on stream maybe, and I thought to myself, my God, this game would be the perfect example of a game that looks great on a TV but horrible on a monitor. I can't believe how bad this looks. And I didn't know this was ever going to come up. And then when it came up, I couldn't remember the name of the game.
Well done.
So I had to venture forward into the wilderness. You all know me. And so I was watching, I was playing some games a couple weeks ago, and I played this one, and I thought, my God, this game is like a piece of art. And I thought this might be a good one to try. And after playing a few other ones, I tried this one on the CRT and tried it on the Mister. And I thought this one had a wide enough difference, in my opinion, to make it worthy of the show. And so what I chose was the original Samurai Shodown, or Samurai Spirits, some parts of the world, released in August of '93 on the Neo Geo platform. You know, the Neo Geo just came out in '91, and this is back. You've got to remember when Street Fighter came around. I believe Street Fighter was released in '91 as well.
Sounds
And
right.
well, Street Fighter revitalized the arcades. I mean, if you were around, if you were there, you know.
Yeah.
The arcades were dying. They were dying. Street Fighter came in, and all of a sudden, arcades it's like a rebirth. And Street Fighter and all the subsequent games carried the arcades to the '90s. I mean, that was the game.
Yeah, I agree.
And so, on the fledgling Neo Geo arcade platform, you've got to have something that plays that in that ball field. Because when Street Fighter 2 came out, you had Fighter's History, and when that lawsuit went down, Fighter's History won, and so these games were good to go. Floodgates were open.
Absolutely.
And so Neo Geo kicked up with the Fatal Fury games originally, then the Art of Fighting games, which were both on their platform. I never really got along with either one of these games, if I'm honest. I didn't like the multiplanar fighting aspect of it, but they were gorgeous games.
Yeah.
And they were on their way, you know. And so it was decided that SNK would release a game that would play in the Street Fighter world. It's funny, though, because when Samurai Shodown was first laid out, this was not going to be a fighting game. It was actually going to be a brawler, just the old standard left to right type thing. And somewhere along the way, the creator, whose name is Yasushi Adachi, decided, hey, I think we could play in the Street Fighter realm, because all of his buddies were playing it, and he's like, we gotta get us some of that. So they went down that road. By the way, Adachi is a heck of a guy. He worked on the first 3 Samurai Showdowns. He also did the Capcom vs. SNK series. He did a lot of Kirby games. He also was one of the production manager on the Minish Cap, the Zelda game, which that surprised me. I didn't know that. And so anyway, he laid down the foundation and planned and created with a team. Of course, this is the days of like a couple guys are over. If you look at the credits on this, it's a horde of people that worked on this. And he laid down the foundation of Samurai Shodown. So the planning stage of this game were, what are we going to do here to separate ourselves from everything else? And what they decided to do was have a fighting game where it was a weapons-based fighting game. Pretty much the first one of that type of the day. It was no uncertain terms. It absolutely was. And so that was the direction they wanted to go. They also wanted to base the game in a Japanese pseudo-historical motif. All right,
Sure.
This isn't the way it happened, thank God, but it was something that was in the ballpark of how it happened, and so that was the direction they went. Now, SNK and these guys had when it comes to, if you've played anything on the Neo Geo that SNK has worked on, they really have a graphical flair when it comes to the artistic presentation of the games. I don't like every SNK game, but no one can doubt the majority of the games are beautiful.
Yeah, in the 90s, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And so they put some of their top people on this game and put it to work. And so what you ended up with was Samurai Shodown. Now, when I mentioned that this was a pseudo-Japanese historical style, I mean that in every sense of the word. A lot of the samurais in this were based on everything from legendary Japanese historical figures to prominent, like for example, Jubei is based on a character that was in a movie that I think it was called Samurai's Resurrection. It was it was a movie of the era that was not what I would call. It was not Ben-Hur, if you know what I mean. And if you watch the movie, there's Jubei complete with eye patch and dumb hair, yielding the sword. So but they've got that element. They've got the chick with the bird who she's like there's a Japanese area of sort of a naturist, like a small village, like back to nature type. That's sort of their representation. Then you've got the actor that comes out. They've got that representation, and a couple of Americans thrown in to boot. So they've tried to they mix this up. And the fighters are fine. I'll get into the fighters a little bit more. But since we're here to talk about the CRT aspects of it, this is what I want to get into is the art overall. One thing that Samurai Shodown brought to the table that it separated it from the Street Fighter was the size of the characters. The actual size of the fighters were bigger, and in one case, huge. Earthquake takes a huge character, and what they did was to get away with this, they implemented a zooming feature that zooms in and out of the action pretty flawlessly. It had been done in, I believe, Art of Fighting, but not as well. Like, it was more quick. Like, the zoom in this is great. They do a great job.
It's very not dramatic. The opposite of dramatic.
It's
subtle.
It's cinematic in terms of, like, it's not like, bah! It's like, it's very natural feeling. And so when you do this sort of graphical flourish, what does that mean? It means you have to draw, you have to have a wider screen, you have to have more stuff so you can zoom in and out to accommodate all that zooming. And that's where this game shines. Everywhere from the opening credit sequence where the samurai sits quietly in the grove between the two statues, and then he slices both the statues open to the rose petals coming down. Everything in this game, the art is beautiful. It's beautiful. And we'll get to the music in a second. The music is also beautiful. But if you look at the artwork, this is that sort of like pencil-perfect artwork that worked great on these machines because it looked more detailed than it actually was. Does that make any sense?
Sure, absolutely.
And so when you take this artwork, and I'm not just talking the fighters, I'm talking also these incredible backgrounds. Everything from everything from water, so like seaside, beach fights, to like stuff like fighting in front of a pier full of cheering soldiers. Everything that's involved is well done, well animated, with a lot of stuff going on. And that's, in fact, Brent, we used to use the seaside thing. We've used that on a couple of shows because it's so cool looking with the boat setting there, because that's such a good scene. So when you do this stuff,
Literal boat, not John.
yeah, not John. That's a Galford scene, because Galford's is a naval officer that is a ninja, by the way. And so you have to do all these things correctly. I first noticed the difference on this having played this at a buddy has well, this is back in the day. He had a Neo Geo cabinet, and I'd go to his house every once in a blue moon to play it. That's one of the things I like to load up on it, and it looked so good. And then I remember finally loading it up at home on the monitor. This is before I even had the MIST. This is way back in the emulator. You could tell the difference unless you get in there and start smoothing and doing all this stuff, and then it just changes when you do the jaggy smoothing. So it changes what you're looking at.
Yeah.
And it makes
really affects the art.
And what it does is it makes it less detailed looking.
Yeah.
It makes it look smoother, but the detail's gone.
It's smoothing it by smearing it.
Now, I'll tell you, though, I wasn't sure that I wasn't an idiot. Now I'm sure now. So this is when I loaded up. You're going to love this. So I've got this little machine I bought years ago that I hacked. It's like a MAME light. I pulled it out of the box, marched it in there, hooked it to the TV, plugged it in, loaded up Samurai Shodown 1, played it. Played it. Because I've gotten so used to not playing on the CRT, and
Sure.
I could instantly tell a difference.
Yeah.
A huge difference. It's as if they're going from a sharp pencil to a dull pencil. That's the best way I can describe it. Am I nuts? Did you see this when you loaded this up?
Well, a few things about the appearance of Samurai Shodown. Like you
Yeah.
said, the scaling effect, they're scaling sprites.
Yeah.
Which is always going to lead to some jankiness.
I'm not sure I don't know. They have a process. I'm not exactly sure what it is, so I'm not going to say you're right there for sure. I don't know exactly what they do for the zoom.
Well,
I'll be honest with you. I don't know what they do. It's not
Regardless-
like, I don't know.
when sprite gets smaller or bigger,
Yeah.
there is some jankiness during those transitions. However, it is still the attention to detail on this game is beyond anything I was used to at the time.
Yeah.
And you can really stick your head close to the screen and see where a CRT would make a difference. I mean, you can do it at home. Load up Samurai Shodown right now.
Yeah.
And literally stick your face into the screen, and you can see where something that should be soft is a jaggy little mess.
Yeah.
And that's so bad for a game like this, where you can tell they spent so much time and effort making this beautiful art. Regardless of what you think of Samurai Shodown as a fighting game, personally, I'm not a huge fan. I thought they made great improvements on the second one. But the game itself is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah. And I will say, if you go through, so I loaded up, I went and played some of the other renowned Neo Geos that I'm a fan of on the system, just to see if it carried over, and I think it did. Stuff like the Metal Slugs, or the King of Fighters, or World Heroes. I think they just look better on a CRT. You know, it's funny, because I make fun of these people that I call them CRT snobs. They're always whining about that stuff. Here's the problem with those guys. They're not wrong. That's the worst part about them.
Yeah.
CRTs are good-looking monitors. You know, they have a good look to them. And so you can't make too much fun of them. It's like, how much are you willing to do to make it the exact way you want it?
Well, and here's the biggest problem with Neo Geo and arcade games in general. The resolution of a standard arcade monitor is not something you would typically get at a home.
It's like 320 by 200.
It's odd, yeah. And because of that, unless you literally own a cab, and we have some in the arcade here, not a Neo Geo, not In fact, we do have some standard resolution monitors, but not
those
playing
two,
Neo
yeah.
Geo games.
One of them work.
You honestly can't understand the difference.
Yeah.
You can imagine the difference, and you're probably pretty spot on. But it matters. It really does matter.
It's even hard if you watch videos on YouTube where they try to explain it. Even then, it's hard.
Yeah.
I mean, there are certain channels that do a really good job, but it's still hard.
We ain't one of them.
Yeah, no, we're not. Just to get, I want to get into the little game a little more than you did proper, because when am I going to go down this road again? Samurai Showdowns was, when it came out, was a beloved. This thing, you talk about release on every conceivable format. This was on everything.
Eventually, yeah.
By the way, this had a Game Boy release. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah, I played it on there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It also had
Or
a
a
Game Gear release. No, it was on the Game Boy. All right, it was on the Game Boy. Among others, everything. This had this is one of the premier 3DO titles. It actually was real good on the 3DO. It's funny, the 3DO, when it wanted to, it could do some good work. I mean, of course, it ranged all the way up till today. The music on this is something else that stood out for me. This doesn't affect the CRT, obviously. Yasu Yamate, also known as Tate Norio, did the music on this. This guy's the King Dong of SNK. He did the music on the Metal Slugs. He did the music on the Art of Fighting, Fatal Furies, the King of Fighters, the World Heroes, and the list goes on and on. He did tons of great music, but he's at his best in the Samurai Shodown series. This traditional mix of musics. It's just beautiful. I just love the way it sounds. It's so great. I mean, the game has a story. Long story short, well, it's a story that's so complicated. I'm not going to get into it.
I was going to say, let's not go down that road, man.
But the
the story doesn't look better on CRT.
Amakusa is the boss in this, and tough boss too, I might add. The cast in this is great. You've got just a traditional samurai in Hashimura. Then you've got the chick we mentioned earlier with the bird, Nakaruru. I love this guy, Ukyo, the ailing swords, but he always looks away from you when he's fighting. You've got Charlotte, the Parisian, which is cool. Galfred, that has a dog. This is the first game that implemented fighting pets, which is cool. I like that. We mentioned Jubei. We mentioned Earthquake. Here's another one. Hanzo Hattori, the ninja. This is sort of a historical basis. And if you're a Kill Bill fan, the guy that made the swords in the Kill Bill movies was Hattori Hanzo. That's a Hanzo sword? He's like, you hawked a Hanzo sword? And rounding out the cast, Senjuro, the kabuki performer, and Tam Tam and Wan Fu. All great characters, very unique, and a lot of fun to play. I like this. I like the fact that the elements of the game do more damage than the actual fist-to-fist fisticuffs. That's something they wanted in the game. They wanted the weapons to do more damage than just fists. So like one good hit can do like almost half your damage if you take it right. So it makes you be careful not to overextend your weapon when you use it. In terms of the gameplay of this, take the CRT parts out of it. What did you think of this as a fighting game?
It's good. It's obviously good. I think this was certainly not the step from Samurai Shodown to Samurai Shodown 2 as, say, something like Street Fighter to Street Fighter 2 was, but I greatly prefer the second game. I think the controls and plays better. Now, that said, that's not saying that Samurai Shodown is bad, because it's not. It's very, very good. Just the overall feel, I think they were still working some of it out. The damaging hits, the over-damaging hits, I think are a little to the extreme. Sure, you want to be able to accentuate a hit and have it do more damage if that's your thing, but I think this game goes really too far over the line on that and makes it so punishing that it's damaging to newcomers.
It's funny because that's what SNK thought. They told him, like, listen, you need to tone down the amount of damage this does, and he just did it anyway.
Oh, yeah. And that's fine. If that's your vision for the game, then that's fine. I just find it a little too much.
Just to round it out, this game was the 6th highest grossing game in Japan of '93, and it was the most popular arcade software kit for a good chunk of '93 in North America. It was the 3rd most popular game in North America in '93. It made America's top 5 highest grossing arcade conversion kits in '94. It won a ton of awards. not limited to EGM's Game of the Year. I think it was in '94, among many others. So this was a very highly touted game.
Sure.
That went on to have over a dozen more titles strapped to it. And the quality of those titles, you can argue, some of them it's up and down. Let's just put it that way. In terms of you're getting this copy of this, it's funny. I found no Super Nintendo, or excuse me, Neo Geo machines that had this game that were for sale. And this was one that you could find in almost every machine.
Yeah, because it's
back
very,
in the
very,
day. This and the
very
second
highly
one.
produced.
But you can get those cheap knockoff cartridges for $50 if you want one now. Those things, if you have to have something to look at, you can go that route.
Of course, the Neo Geo carts are huge.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that the boxes and stuff that this came in for the arcades were probably really nice.
Yeah. One thing I should mention is that there was a ton of, I guess you would call it, balancing or editing or censorship between different areas. And since this game did have some blood, it wasn't an excessive amount. But
you can chop a person in half.
Right, but it's not like in Mortal Kombat where the guts and stuff spill out.
You're right. They just kind of jump.
By the way, that was exclusive. That was put in there exclusively because of Mortal Kombat. That's why they put that in there. Bode had a look at this one. He writes in, "Sharp like the edge of a samurai sword, my mental blade cuts through flesh and bone. As a real-life samurai myself, how can I not review this game? I never really spent a ton of money or time on any SNK fighting games, but this one always got a quarter or two when I saw it in the arcade. I really like the zooming in and out of the screen, the ability to temporarily lose your weapon. Another cool feature is that that when you lose, the game throws you a bone by showing you one of your character's special moves on the continue screen. I turned on the CRT filter on this one, and honestly, I preferred it without the filter. So there you go. The filter's not going to cut it with an actual
It's not going
CRT.
to be the same, yeah.
Let's talk about, we got a couple of comments here just on CRTs in general, if you'll indulge me. Pajako writes in, I'll do a combination review as this week we're trying to answer the question, are these better on a CRT or not? And no one wants to hear yet another review of well-trodden ground. So after hunting around, eventually needing to buy a SCART cable for my Mister, I was up and running. Now, as a side note, the beauty of running Mister is that I can run both at the same time and actually flick my eyes between the two while I'm playing, which that's true, you can't do that. Second side note, I played both in isolation so I wasn't distracted. On my 10-inch Panasonic CRT, the picture looks awesome. Gone are the hash changes between gradient color bands. Gone is most of the pixelization. CRT gives you a slightly smoothness that I do enjoy. On my 15-year-old 40-inch LCD TV, you can see everything ever pixel. Everything that a CRT image would hide. Which one was best? Well, that is always going to be subjective. And no surprises here, but I found out that I really got into it more on my little CRT because I was instantly back in my bedroom or in a friend's living room. Seriously, I had a friend with a Neo Geo CD.
Oh, nice.
And a hit of nostalgia was way stronger than just booting it up on the big screen. Truthfully, if I had space for the little TV to stay out permanently, then yes, I would have this permanently hooked to my Mister. Does that mean that the big flat retro gaming screen sucks? No. I do most of my retro gaming on the big TV and have a great time. Plus the video filters, we can come pretty close to a CRT game, so snobbery is not needed. Finally, I will say that CRT gaming does nothing to improve my Samurai Shodown skills. I got my ass kicked. There you go on that. And lastly, from Boat of Car, he chimed in on the CRT question. I still prefer to play some retro consoles through a CRT. There's something about the intimacy of a small screen and the slight blurriness that smooths pixel edges and brings me comfort. Sometimes colors tend to pop more in the CRT too. But the real winner is the Amiga. I don't know what it is about playing through an RGB connector on the A1000 monitor, but the games just look right in a way they don't look on any other screen, even when you adjust for aspect ratios on emulators, etc. It's how I prefer to play all my Amiga games when possible.
Absolutely.
By the way, he's playing on a great monitor that I lent him. So there you go. So and I will say, it's funny Pajako brought that up. I don't know how much of the CRT question is nostalgia. But have any nostalgia. In fact, I would love the LCDs to win. So I would have no reason to lug around a giant CRT, but I can't help myself. They do have a certain look a CRT brings to them that I can't get on the LCD.
Well, and my final thought on the subject is much like I mentioned before. I prefer gaming on a CRT monitor, but for me, the difference isn't great enough to invest both the time, money, and space that a CRT requires.
Yeah.
I wish I could, but I can't.
And the problem for me is my CRT is not in near my Mister, and so it doesn't get used as much as it probably should, which is a shame. But it's just the way it is. I've got no room for that huge thing in my room.
Well, Aaron, you know what we definitely have time for?
The wheel?
It's the wheel.
All right, fire that sucker
Now,
up.
Aaron, do you remember what you put on the wheel? Because you got kind of called out last time.
Well, yeah, I will say that's one scary man that did the calling of me out. I replaced 1980s pinball with 1990s pinball with 1970s pinball this week, and the new piece you picked out, Brent. What did you pick? I have no idea. I have no idea what you picked.
I picked ROM hacks, suggested by Mitsuyama.
Mitsuyama. Okay. Fired up. I was just telling Brent we haven't rolled a retro rewind piece for a long time, so I wouldn't mind seeing that come up. I've been playing so much pinball. That's the thing.
Well, Aaron, it looks like your wish is denied.
Dadgummit.
As we play a little bit.
Okay, this was suggested by our good buddy Retro Dream State. It's the GP32, the quirky Korean handheld.
Yes.
That I know and love, and you know nothing about, and actually you did have you had a GP2X,
yeah.
So you're close.
Yeah, I owned one.
So we actually will have something to say about this because we actually sort of know something about it.
We actually played them when they were released.
What are the odds that we would know something about a quirky Korean handheld? So that will be in 2 weeks. Now we hope you'll join us next week as we careen violently back around. And this time around, we're going to be taking on the Coco Show. And I got to say, the game we're playing, I have never heard of this game.
What'd we get?
It's called Get Me Out of Here. That's what it's called. So that's next week.
I didn't know our fans made a show.
Yeah, Retro Rotation will be back next week, Sunday, March 2nd, for the Coco Show. Get Me Out of Here. And in 2 weeks, we'll fire up some GP32. That'll be fun. GP stands for Game Park, by the way.
Absolutely.
I think that's all we've got. Anything? I don't know if there's anything else we need to say before we take this thing to the house. But you got any final thoughts on CRTs versus LCD?
Nope.
All righty, that's all we got. Then we'll see you next week for Get Me Out of Here. And until then, have a good week, everybody.
We got it going. With a spin of the wheel, we'll uncover our fate and stream it to you all in one take. We tend to be loud and we fight quite a bit, but it's an unscripted show, so you get what you get. If we stopped it right now and we just walked away, we'd be back next week, 'cause we just can't wait to play.